Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Bothell Planning Commission, Special Planning Commission for Wednesday, March 30th, 2016. All commissioners are present and accounted for, with the exception of Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Booth, who are absent and excused. Before we begin with our agenda, are there any non-agenda public comments? Okay, seeing none. There's no approval of minutes for this evening. Any new business?
None here.
Okay. So with that, we will continue the public hearing, 2015 docket plan code amendments. Continued public hearing regarding the Shelton View, Meridian, 3rd Street Southeast Sub-Area, Nike Hill Plan and Code Amendments.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission, and members of the public. This, of course, is the Shelton View Neighborhood Activity Center, Nike Hill. We've been using the term. And tonight, I think we'd like to go over and have the Planning Commission do some finalization on its recommendation, including the plan designations. We've had a lot of discussions about that. The DNR 2 parcel recommendation, which I provide some language within your packet, as well as, of course, identify any additional findings that the Planning Commission would like to have discussed. And that's basically what I've done is I provide you draft findings, conclusions, and recommendation. And this is basically the Planning Commission's basically thought processes and what they have identified during the course of these hearings that we try and capture for you. And again, because we're doing this sometimes from memory and imperfect memory as it may be, we want you to basically make sure that those do follow the provisions that you want to emphasize to the council when this go forward. Now, one of the things you'll notice within these findings is that there's kind of a lack on the affordable housing provisions. And that's because we have not really had this discussion on affordable housing yet for this sub-area. We've touched upon it, but we really haven't focused upon that kind of a concept. And what we propose is that you continue this public hearing to April 27th, and there's a couple reasons for that, but basically to allow us to complete some affordable housing language for you. And then we will have a study session on April the 6th when Arch can be here, and we're going to focus on affordable housing for both this sub-area as well as the South Riverside Drive area. That way what we can do is we can kind of, take that focused hearing, which is probably necessary on affordable housing because it can be very complex, and really get into the details about that. Of course, with Arthur Sullivan of Arch that can be here, a regional coalition for housing, Arch, that can help you going through those things. And then what the idea is that we will come back with the public hearing for the South Riverside on April 13th, and then the public hearing on this one on April 27th, and we'll kind of finalize those two items with the affordable housing provisions as well. I don't want to go too much through this because we've looked at this quite a few times, but this is basically the draft Planning Commission recommendation for the plan designations. And I'd kind of like to have some clarification from you tonight. If this is along the lines of what the Commission wants to do, we, of course, may have a couple little tweaks here and there. I don't think so, but that's basically the concept that I'd like to talk about. And the one area that I'm still not 100% sure, because I've kind of heard from both things, I'm not finding my mouse, I'm sorry, is that down in the southeast corner there you can see R9600, no change, or change to R8400. I know the Commission has kind of talked about this, and I went through my notes, and I think I've got two different discussion points. So if we can kind of narrow that down tonight, that'd be great. If not, we can do it, of course, the 27th. And of course, the rest of these provisions are there. And again, I would put the two little asterisks on the DNR 2 parcel. As the Commission knows, the council's kind of identified that maybe that's an area we may want to explore acquisition. So the concept behind the findings that I have provided for the Commission is that the Commission has a finding that says, be that whatever it is, if the city can acquire this property, that's great, that's the best thing to do. But if it does not get acquired by the city, we should assign this plan designation, zoning classifications to that piece of property. So I've got some details about those areas in case we have some additional discussion we want to make on this one. I will note that Mr. Feek is in the audience, and he provided a letter that's exhibit number 40, and he owns property on the east side of, oh, there's my arrow, yay, on the east side of Meridian Avenue, and he has asked that the Commission change its recommendation from R5400A, which is what the Commission has identified, to maybe an R4000. He believes that may be a little bit more appropriate given the location of the arterial and things like that. I'll let him explain his reasoning for that further. And of course, this is a capacity table. This kind of identifies what number of dwelling units would be adding to this particular sub area, and you can see it's pretty modest in relative terms. And these are just footnotes about the table in case somebody has a specific question. And of course, we've had these zoning provisions that we want to apply to the RAC areas that would essentially have a mandatory area for retail nearer to the street, as well as a mandatory area for residential on the second and third floors, if there are those second and third floors, to make sure we do to get the true mixed use that we're really looking for in this area. And this, of course, would be applied to both the north and the south part of this area. And again, I've kind of identified the affordable housing provisions. And on April 6th, we're going to have a much more focused discussion about affordable housing. And this kind of goes through all that in detail, but basically you kind of have a pretty good feel for what that drill will be, that we're going to actually focus on many of the different choices we have as far as that goes. And the DNR2 property, again, I kind of briefly outlined that I've got a draft finding within the commission's packet of findings that says, okay, in this case, you know, if we can acquire both, that's the best thing, but if it doesn't happen, assign the planning designations as we have recommended. And the next steps, of course, would be to continue this public hearing to March 23rd. I'm sorry, that's the wrong calendar. Basically, it's April 27th. And then we basically have this particular code and plan and code amendment wrapped up. So I'm going to stop at that point and let you go into the public comments or respond to any questions the commission may have at this time with staff.
Any specific questions?
I think I do have some questions, but I wouldn't mind hearing from the public before I ask the questions. That's okay.
That work? If there are comments from the public regarding any of these items, now would be a great time to hear from you. And we do thank you for taking your time and being a part of this. This is important. We appreciate that.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Feek, and we raised 5 kids living on 22931, which is right next to the other property, 22923. And we sold that piece of property in the last year, mainly because of personal reasons that I needed to get rid of that piece of land or that house. It held too many memories, and we had too many problems. So mentally, I had to do that. But we lived there, well, my wife, 44 years, and then we've owned it since, so we've had this property for quite a while. The greatest thing about this property is the location. It really is central to so many different things. We bought that duplex that we currently have for the simple reason that it was a junk heap, and I got tired of living next to a junk heap. It was not a very good investment because I spent so much money fixing it up, but it's a very nice house now, and we've never had any problem renting it. The area right at the corner of that property is a mobile home park, and I'm hoping that with this rezoning of whatever it is, we can bring in sewers. I started that process. I was forming a ULID, but then I got sick. I have multiple sclerosis, and then 2 weeks ago I had a heart attack. So it's been kind of a road for me, but when I was doing the ULID, there are 55 properties there that without sewers, and nobody turned me down. I just had to stop it because of my health. But people are really looking for a way of bringing in sewers, and the only way I can see that happening is you got to have higher density. It's so expensive otherwise, or I'd have done it myself. And the reason I pick because talking to Mr. Blackburn, I thought, well, what is the zonings? There's a lot of different zonings that are going on around here. And I thought that the R4000 would seem to be more flexible than the R54A, which is attached, I guess. And it doesn't mean that maybe it'll be more dense, but it'll be more flexible. I just think it would be greater for a lot of the people that live around there that I've talked to, that would make it easier for them to bring in sewers and then do that, plus have a little extra land. If you have any questions of me, I'd certainly answer them.
Hi, Mr. Feek, thanks for coming in tonight. I heard you pretty loud and clear, but could you, I don't know if you can point on that thing, which parcel is yours?
Can
Is
I
there a
point
mouse
to
there?
It's 22923, it's an L-shaped piece of land. It's an acre, a little over an acre. We used to have both pieces of
Okay.
property, but we sold, I divided off the house part of 22931, which was right next to it.
Okay, gotcha, thank you.
Any others?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Anyone else in the audience? And again, if you could state your name and address.
You bet. Rich Scrivener, Washington State Department of Natural Resources, 1111 Southeast Jefferson Street, Olympia, 98504. Good to be in front of you again. Good evening, gentlemen. Probably just want to give you a couple of updates where we are and make one comment regarding the DNR Parcel 2. On March 9th, we received a letter from City Manager, a letter of interest to acquire DNR 1, the 26-acre piece. And one of the conditions in that letter was that DNR would offer its appraisal unit to evaluate the property, the considerations for value as well as development potential of parcel 1. And we're doing that right now. Probably be 3 or 4 weeks before we have that information available, and that was a commitment that we made to the city that we would help out in giving them a good idea for that. Now, the good news is that we'll have some current information regarding value. The bad news is it's not an appraisal, and it's information that will change 2 years from now if the city is able to acquire the property when we go to put together the appraisal. So it's kind of a dangerous piece of information to have out there. I'm sure it'll be shared with the Planning Commission as well as the City Council when it's out, because it's in the letter from the city manager. So I want to give you an update on that, where we are. We are not looking at parcel 2. We're only focused on parcel 1, okay? In that letter also, and I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, but there is a deadline for the city to perform in acquiring the DNR parcel, and it is December 31st, 2018. And so if the city is unable to come up with the funding through the various grant applications, then DNR will have the opportunity to move in a different direction to dispose of the property. Again, the focus is on DNR 1, not DNR 2. So lastly, and then I can answer any questions you may have. Lastly, we certainly appreciate the zoning considerations for DNR 2 and support the R4000 and the RACOPNB designations on that piece, and they are appropriate given that location and what the city wants to do with that. My concern is there's no timeline imposed like there is on DNR 1, and does it just flail out there as we move forward trying to get the DNR parcel 1 sold? So just a little concerned about the time frame which the city council will probably have to address. So if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer those, but I just wanted to provide some clarification.
Yeah, hey, Rich, thanks for coming again.
You bet.
You've come to so many meetings that we've had on this.
Habit forming, Dave.
Let's see. Thanks for that information. Can you clarify again? You said it's not an appraisal. So what's being done again? What is it called?
Well, I don't know, you know, appraisers, when they evaluate property and put together information that it is going to be shared, and it's not an appraisal, they need to be careful how they quantify that. You know, we're talking about certifications and licenses that are on the line, and they just need to be careful how it's defined, what it's used for, and the purpose, and also knowing that quite possibly it could change 2 years from now when we go to appraise the property. But at least it gives us a snapshot right now of what the profile of the DNR 1 property looks like right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Rich. Thanks again for spending time here at the city.
You bet, Roger.
I guess to tag on to that, so essentially the seller is doing an analysis telling the city how much this property is going to be worth.
That's a
Is
good
that-
question. We are putting together a range of what this property looks like, the snapshot right now, in order to help the city put together their grant applications.
I see. That was my main question.
Yeah,
Was
I
what's
figured
the purpose of it?
You were going through there, yeah.
And so, and you may not have the answer to this. Is this something that's a rough order of magnitude? Is this something that you may expect in 2 years for the value to be 20% either way, 50% either way? Is there,
Good
or
try.
you just don't know?
I just don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't know how property values might change and demand, so.
Okay. But so this is just for grants. That's the purpose. So we can
It's
move
to
ahead with
help,
some
yeah,
other
but
processes.
you've got to identify as
Right.
if we were gonna sell right now, and, because you want to make sure that the grants are high enough. You don't want to
Gotcha.
come in with X and the, you know, X on the grants and the property's Y.
Yeah, okay. And then, for DNR two, there's no action or no interest, or no, I don't know if there's no bandwidth, or why is that not being considered when DNR one is that a kind of a resources kind of a thing, or?
No, I
why-
think it's probably more of a matter that this is fairly new information.
Okay,
And all of our discussions, whether they have been in person with the city or through emails, has only focused on DNR 1.
okay,
And that was our commitment to work with the city on that one. So the information and the optional zoning, if that's appropriate here, is relatively new, and we're just evaluating that.
yeah, okay. So Bruce, in terms of DNR two, I know there's a lot of discussion around that right now, and I don't know where we're at in that process, but is this something where we see that we're just kind of behind where we were on one timeline wise, and it's going to follow that, or is it it's such an infant stage that we don't know if we're going to pursue that conversation, or?
Well, I haven't had a chance to speak with John Keats, the Parks Director, about this recently. We've been kind of going back and forth. So I don't know what the exact status of that is. But as Mr. Scrivener has identified, this is a brand-new aspiration to look at the DNR2 parcel. And it takes a while to go through the system.
Sure, sure. So, Rich, you haven't been contacted about two at all? Is that right?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks for the updates, Rich.
You bet.
Two quick questions. So the December 31st, 2018 deadline, is that when all funds are due, or is that the date when we need a purchase and sale agreement in place? How's that work?
Well, that date came from John, and that date is a culmination of 2 grant cycles through RCO. And those grant cycles are annual. So they're hoping to combine those 2 cycles into having enough funding and whatever other funding sources are used. And so December 31st, 2018 came up that way.
Okay. And one other question. I guess with regards to, this is sort of a question for Bruce and for you, Rich. With regards to DNR2, I like the language that we have drafted tonight with regards to first priority would be to purchase it if possible. Right now we have a lot of competing interests in Bothell, and trying to determine which park is the most valuable or rises to the top of the list is not our function, that would be the Parks Board.
Right.
Is that something that they're actively taking a look at? Or, I guess I don't want to walk away today, like you mentioned, with sort of no direction in perpetuity. It would be nice to have something in place.
And I can respond. I know that one of the previous comments I had with the Parks Director was that they were going to begin that discussion. And I don't know where that is in their own process. They meet once a month as opposed to compared to your 3 times a month, but they do take those type of actions, and I know they have begun that discussion.
Okay. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Bruce.
You bet.
Rich, what's the process of determining the current value? It's not an appraisal, we know that, because that can cost $4,000 to $5,000, $6,000. Is it a broker's opinion of value? Is it?
No, it's our chief appraiser.
Okay.
He's gonna put together the profile of the property and the comparisons in the general and immediate area and come up with a range.
Excellent. So it basically is the same quality of an actual appraisal without it being an appraisal. I mean, if it's your chief appraiser, I'm.
It's his homework assignment.
Yeah, there you go.
there.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
Understood. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks, gentlemen.
Anybody else that would like to speak? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Bruce, I'm going to suggest that what we do is we attack these one at a time. Let's go through the DNR 2 first, and then the R9600 versus R8400.
You bet.
If that works. Okay. So on DNR 2, what direction would you like from us on that?
Well, I just want to make sure that the finding that staff has crafted reflects the planning commission's desire in that that the idea behind it. DNR 2 acquisition is certainly optimal, but if it doesn't happen, that the planning commission's recommendation for plan designations would be appropriate.
Just one quick question, Bruce.
Yes.
If the council's direction is to try to acquire it, and our direction tonight or our recommendation would be to upzone it in the event that it can't be acquired, aren't we sort of in opposite competing interest? I mean, if we upzone it to R4000 and RAC, OP, and B, which we have for a long time thought that was a good, a good applicable zoning for this area, that will inherently make it more expensive for the city of Bothell to purchase if that were to ever come to pass.
Yes. Now, remember, this is, of course, a planning commission recommendation. This will go to the city council toward the end of the year. And by that time, the council will probably have all the information they need to make an evaluated and basically a good judgment call on this. So that's really where basically the rubber meets the road, is before the city council. And they will have that debate along with whatever type of recommendation the Parks Department has, because they're going to be, Parks Board has, because they'll be going through this process as well this year. And that will come back to the council, so they will get to make this decision.
Thanks.
And I guess, if the chair will allow, I've got some questions that I deferred that I was going to ask before. Maybe we get into specifics of parcels that I could, in the packet. I don't know, or should we just stick to DNR 2?
If we can keep them on topic,
Okay.
I think that would be.
Okay. So we're talking about just the specifics of DNR 2 and our recommendations. I like what we've done so far with it. One thing that I think the city is trying to address, and so I guess I'm trying to envision, let's just get to a point where, the city is not able to acquire that property. And so we have the specific zonings that we've shown here. I feel like we're kind of in dire need of, dire might be a strong word, but of a recreational place up there. And so I don't know how that could be incorporated into what we already have. I don't mind the R4000 and the RAC, OP, and B. I don't know if there's, I don't know if, you know, I know we've kind of come far along in the process, but I'm thinking like if there's R4000 there and there's, I mean, it'd be really nice to have some kind of open space there for people to be able to congregate and play on. I mean, there's, without the kids or whomever lives there, you know, having to be driven somewhere to play. But I don't know if we can do anything like that at this point. It's just something that I've been thinking about. And I know we talk about these in many iterations, but things change over time in my mind. I think of different things, and obviously the council is looking at maybe acquiring it for a park space. So I don't know if that's an option this far down the road, but I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Roger, anything?
No, I mean, that's an interesting concept. Dave, does the development code address, I mean, I know it addresses recreation, and there are either mitigation, some kind of mitigation that, I don't know if you can, in a particular area, require a certain kind of open space as opposed to, you know, paying fee in lieu of, or, you know, impact fees or whatever. Is that a mechanism that you could
Well,
employ in this case?
well, the city has two things. They have a development impact fee for parks, basically that every development per unit cost has to pay a certain fee to the city. The other thing, of course, is that every development has to provide a certain amount of on-site recreational space, basically some type of a little yard area where people can go out and you know, throw a frisbee or a small ball. And that's based upon each individual dwelling unit. The number of dwelling units they have to provide a certain square footage of land. As well as there's a public gathering provision underneath the development regulations that require a certain amount of space that's basically intended for not just recreation, but for people to gather and have kind of that social interaction type thing. So those are all elements that are within the development regulations that have to be applied for and provided for on the property.
Okay. Sure.
Two follow-ups. Public gathering, what size project or what acreage are we talking about when that would actually be kicking into place?
I was afraid you were going to ask me
Sorry.
that, and it escapes my mind right now, but it's not the public gathering is not a large amount of area. The recreation space is 200 square feet per dwelling unit. The public gathering space is much smaller, and it's intended to be more of just a kind of going by someplace that is basically centrally located where people have a chance to have that social interaction. This public gathering space is not supposed to be the place where you go out and you throw the ball.
Okay. And one other question, the RACOPNB, forgive me, but we've been looking at this for a long time. Is the 2.2 acres that we currently have assigned, is that the same size we've been tracking the entire time?
Well, originally it was about 2.2, and then it was 1.1, then went back to 2.2.
Yeah, I thought at one time we talked about enlarging it a little bit just to make sure it would be a feasible developable piece of land. I just wanted to make sure that 2.2 was still within that threshold in your guys' mind.
Yeah, we think that that's probably the best area given basically the characteristics of that neighborhood and the intersection. That's probably a really logical designation area.
Okay, thanks, Bruce.
You bet.
Yeah, Bruce, I was wondering if you could clarify something on page 19, just as we discussed the DNR2, and I know we've gone down the road quite a bit with regards to this, but you just kind of catch things over time that you didn't before, at least I do. It says that this property, and just, I'm looking at it for this specific case, but also when we talk about other upzoning cases in the future. It says, partway down in part 2, all the way at the bottom of page 19, it says this property is not logical single-family residential area because the parcel is relatively shallow, width property 240 feet. It's adjacent on one side to a secure federal facility and 24-hour security. You know, a couple other things with regards to the other side being a arterial street. I guess I'm trying to understand why then, I'm trying in my mind, why is it then logical to put even more people in an area like that? I'm just, why upzone it? Why is, I'm trying to understand that.
Absolutely, and I think what it is that what we have found through different studies is that residents in multifamily type situations are much more amenable to having situations that, you know, like a busy street or maybe some type of a use that's not quite so compatible than single family. The other choice is if you left at 9,600, we have seen the result of that, which has been nothing has been put onto this piece of property for many, many years, and even during 2 really hot housing markets. And unfortunately, when you have these kind of situations, it's just not one of those situations where people want to have large lot, single-family residential developments there. And so the idea behind it is if you have a little more density, you have a little bit different housing style, people are much more amenable to locating to that location.
In addition to that, oftentimes a multifamily development will have some amenities that a single-family home would not be able to have, i.e. a fitness center, a gym, a pool, or, a basketball court or something like that, whereas individual single-family homes would not be able to afford that. So from my perspective, I think it does make an awful lot of sense to upzone this to an R4000 where they could build some relatively decent-sized multifamily building there. So Bruce, what direction do you need from us for DNR 2?
I don't think I really need any direction from the commission at this time, primarily because, again, this is one of those items that's going to be going to basically a different board and a different body to have a final determination.
Right.
I just want to make sure the commission is acceptable of the concept of applying the designations that you have talked about for the past, about 5 months now. That basically that is the fallback position that the planning commission believes is the best approach from a land use perspective, should the property not be acquired.
If we can just get a read from each of us on what we're seeing here, that would be helpful.
I am leaning that direction, I guess, to supporting it. More and more I think about it, I'm concerned. I drove that 228th last night around 6:15, and it was still just, it had tons of traffic there. Traffic's usually not a big thing on my mind, but I know we'll have impact fees and such, but I guess we're creating quite a bit more traffic, and I'm really looking forward to the traffic numbers apparently we're going to get at the next meeting. So that I'm curious to see too. I'm a little bit worried about the traffic there, but it does seem like it'd be a good area to incorporate more growth. Although I'd still really like to see not just a small little, I'd love to see some type of a tennis court or, something like that, for a basketball court, something like that in there where kids could go run around and have a place to play rather than, I don't even know where they'd walk from there, maybe to the elementary school, I'm not sure, but, so I guess I'm leaning towards it at this point, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm fully support the R4000. I think it's a really consistent with what we've been talking about over the last 5 months, so, yeah.
I think, this zoning that we're looking at now makes sense if we are not to acquire. I'd like to underline in bold if, that's our first choice is obviously to try to acquire it for park space. And even if we were to do so, I don't know that I would recommend the whole thing being an open park. I mean, that would be great, but maybe still have the RAC OPNB designation. Also, it's a grand plan, but if we were somehow able to get DNR 1, part of this DNR property could be potentially the parking or the trailhead if you could cut behind the FEMA fence on the south of the property. So I wouldn't recommend making any changes today, but I think there is some flexibility with that space.
And again, this is, I think, our 8th meeting on this particular topic, and I think we've discussed it and changed it back and changed it again, and I really like where we've landed right now at the R4000 and then the RAC OPNB, and I appreciate your question about it was smaller and then we made it larger, and I think we did land on the 2.2, so I fully support what we've got here. Okay. Anything else from us on that one?
The only other item identified is if there's anything in the findings that you'd like to have, some additional items in the finding, or if there's something in there that you're saying, I don't know if that's actually what our discussion was, please let me know and I can make those changes. So when we come back on the 27th, we can have as complete a set as possible.
So Bruce, I was looking at, so it looks like page 2, and this is part of the verbiage that we're talking about relative to DNR 1 and DNR 2, and the verbiage that we use, it says if it's a choice between DNR 1 or DNR 2, kind of makes it sound like they're two kind of equivalent, and we just need to pick one.
Oh, I see.
But really, DNR one is a monster, right? I mean, it's big, and so I just, that wording just threw me off a little bit. I think it's going to depend on funding, right? It's going to depend on a lot of things that maybe don't even make it our choice necessarily. There might be other things that are going to determine that. So it just hit me a little bit strange. If anybody else wants to weigh in on that, I don't know that it needs to be changed, but
And is that in the findings, page on the findings,
yeah,
or is that in the
page
memo?
2.
It's in the memo.
It's in the memo. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
the memo, okay.
So I don't know if so that's your recommended finding verbiage, I guess.
All right, I will make sure and amend that. It basically doesn't go quite so much as a competing
Yeah,
type
it's
interest
just kind
item.
of
I
where
can hear- I think
wherever
I
we
hear what you're
land,
saying, yes.
kind of a thing.
I guess I would disagree slightly, and I see where you're coming from, Commissioner Cecil, that we shouldn't be really the ones judging which parcels are being looked at. But DNR 1 has been part of PROSAP for, I don't know, 8-10 years. DNR 2, we just found out about trying to be acquired the other day. It's hard to weigh one over the other, but I guess this whole process, we've been focused on DNR 1, and we've been looking at this zoning that we're looking in front of us for DNR 2. So trying to stay consistent with what we've done for the last year in here, I think it does make sense to kind of keep it as written. I mean, I think to your point, funds will dictate exactly what can be done. So maybe this doesn't really add any strength to our argument based on what's available, but I guess I wouldn't shy away from how we have it written. I think it's,
Yeah, I think to me it just kind of makes it look like we got two sitting right here and we're just going to pick one. So it would just hit me sideways. So I'm not bent out on it or anything. So if we don't change it, it was just more of an observation, I think.
If I may, how about if you let me take a shot at maybe making that maybe not quite so harsh, or trying to set up a competing interest thing, because that's wasn't the intent at all. It's just that those two, the DNR 1 property has a really different character
Yeah.
than the DNR 2 property, maybe a different approach. But
I mean, if a citizen looked at it and they said, oh, well, okay, so we're going to vote on this, or, so that's not exactly how it's going to go down, I don't think. So anyway.
Okay.
Thanks, Bruce.
Second topic, the R9600 versus R8400. What was that again?
Well, essentially what it is in the far southwest corner, or southeast, I'm sorry, southeast corner, there was basically some discussion about whether that's more appropriate as 9600 or 8400. And we had some discussion about 8400 and maybe some discussion about 9600. I just want to clarify which designation the commission was kind of leaning toward. Right now it's 9600, when 9600 is our default single-family residential zone. That's what it is to the east. However, to the south, it's 8400. So, and of course, we did receive a letter from a property owner who is in the very southern portion of that little area that has said, look, he would rather have 8400 than 9600. Basically, the difference is one lot. The other lot, and that's the only lot that it has any effect on at all. He's at 2.8 and he goes to 3.4 or something like that. It's a very, minor change as far as capacity goes, but it's more of a character kind of an approach. So I'm just kind of curious to make sure I get that characterized correctly.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I think we talked about it in the past when we had more commissioners here, and I think we all agreed that 9600 was appropriate in that it was surrounded by an 9600 to the side. So I'm in favor of keeping it 9600.
So Bruce, to the east and north, I guess, the large area there, kind of on the east border of our planning area here,
Yes.
that's
9600,
9600?
yes.
Okay. And then south of the blue line here is 84?
8400, that's correct, yes.
I guess I'd be more apt to, as a buffer between the 9600 and the 4000, kind of like what we're doing with the 5400A. I mean, I could go with either one, but I think the R8400 provides a little bit more of a buffer between your big lots and your R4000.
Now, remember, the difference is virtually indistinguishable.
Yeah.
It's just, they are, when you're out in the field and you look at an 8400 lot and a 9600 lot, it's like they're the same. So I don't know if it's really a, you know,
So is the,
don't get too concerned about buffering
Yeah, I
things
know
because
it's not
it's
a
probably
huge- it's not a
basically
huge change.
virtually the same.
so the property to the south there, along the east side of Meridian, it looks just from the slide there like that's largely undeveloped, is that?
It actually has a pre-application, development application in at this point, just to the south of the site.
Is that, how big of a property is that? Is that a,
It's 14 total lots, I believe. And I
okay.
don't recall what it's not a large, you know, it's not more than about 3 or 4 acres.
okay. I could go either way. I think, being that there's a development, application in already down south there, I think they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and this isn't gonna benefit them at all. So I'm fine with 96.
Yeah, I thought we had only discussed the difference between 5400A and 9600. I don't even remember kicking around 8400. I may have missed that meeting, but I'm fine with leaving it 9600. I don't feel strongly either way on this one.
And I'm in the same boat. I do recall we had conversations about the 5400, actually carrying that zoning all the way down. And we landed on leaving it where it is at 9600, so. And again, I don't think it's going to make a difference one way or the other, so.
No, and again, that was because I had it written down both ways on this one of my notations. I said, oh, I want to make sure I get it clear. So thank you very much for doing that for me.
And then Mr. Feek's request, changing the zoning from R5400 to R4000. Thoughts?
No, I appreciate the homeowner coming down to give us his take on it, and he has lived there a long time. I guess the chair mentioned earlier, I guess we've been talking about this for quite a bit of time, and I guess I'm comfortable with all we discussed to keep it at the R5400A.
Yeah, I guess I haven't had a whole lot of time to look at the kind of the ins and outs of the geometry of the property. So I think what we're doing, I think is good. So Bruce, would you mind, maybe giving us a side-by-side of what the R4000 does versus the R5400A and the differences between those? The
Yeah.
significant differences between them?
The primary difference is the 4000 is around 11 units per acre. The 5400A is about 8 units per acre. What we have seen within the 5400A is a lot of detached condominiums and that type of a product. The R4000 has been more along the lines of townhouses and that product, although it's one of those things where we haven't really had a lot of R4000 designation developments. And a couple of them have been true garden style, if you would, multifamily, where you've got basically 5 or more dwelling units within one large building. So there's not a lot of difference, but with the 5400A, you have a tendency more to get the detached condo or the townhouse, true townhouse style of development than you do with the R4000.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, looking at what's there and what's may or may not develop, it seems like the 5400A product in there, if in the parts that could be developed, would be fairly consistent with what's already there. So that's my take.
Yeah, I would agree. I think even an upzone to 5400A is a significant change for the area. I mean, going from 9600. It does help solve some inconsistencies we have with the current houses and lots that are on the east side of Meridian. I do like the point about taking a look at sewers and increasing density. That is a good mechanism for making it affordable, but I think 5400A still makes sense.
I recall when the topic originally came up, we had actually discussed like R2800 and R4000 and R8400, et cetera. So we have spent quite a bit of time on this. And one of the concerns was that if we upzone it to anything much smaller than R5400, we still have Meridian, which some so you can have even more traffic, more kids walking to school, et cetera, no sidewalks. So I think that's why we landed on the R5400A. And that's when there was a group of 7 of us, not 4 of us here as well. So I'm comfortable leaving it at the R5400A. Any other direction?
Any other? My apologies. Any other direction you may have from the commission on the findings would be great. We also, of course, have the option for the commission to, as they review it, to send in comments to staff, and we can, make changes that way as well. But if you've got any changes, because again, I want to emphasize, this is your findings that I'm preparing for you. And I want to make sure I capture your discussion accurately.
Okay. Commissioner Vliet, you indicated that there were some other items that now's a great time to, I think, go through those.
Let me see if there's, and actually, not to jump back to DNR2, but I was thinking about it before, the 2.2 acres. Did we ever look at making it, the RAC, even bigger than 2.2? Or, I'm trying to understand where we landed on the 2.2.
Right, and if you recall, when we were talking about that, we were concerned about how far to the south that line would come, and we were trying to keep that synergy at the intersection where we've got the kind of the real, basically the comp plan really does call for that activity center to be right around the intersection area. And we're worried about going too much further than about 400 feet from that intersection. Seem to be just going too far. And the other thing, you get it down a little bit further, and then the area to the east side of Meridian gets a little bit affected. So we were trying to find that comfortable synergy, I guess, is between enough to make the development work, but not too much to make it so that it doesn't lose that adjacency to the intersection.
I think I'm recalling that now. Thanks for refreshing my memory on that. I noticed in the packet too, it says that the PACA Shelton PACA notice was sent out, with regards to these zoning possible changes on September 2nd of 2015. So how does that work? Is anything ever sent out again, or is that a one-time mailing, or how does that work?
Usually it's a one-time mailing, and then every hearing, the commission continues that. I've had a lot of conversations with different folks asking what the status is, and I will send them a packet or something like that. And they've been keeping in touch with me via email or via the phone. And as the commission will recall probably pretty well, that the primary concern was the DNR 1 parcel and the MC Coast parcel. And the commission made it pretty clear what their decision was on those, or their recommendation was going to be on those 2 parcels. And most of the people said, that's great. If it changes, let me know. But as long as that's the situation, they were pretty good with it.
Perfect. And a last just comment, I guess, in general. I know sometimes I do kind of belabor these open space areas, but I guess part of that is because essentially, it's not in its natural state at all, but essentially that area has never been developed before, ever in the past, as far as I know. And maybe it was. So when we make choices as planning commission, to me, I take it real, and not that everybody else up here does too, but when I go back to maybe leaving an open space there for people to play, and by open space, it could be an actual park with basketball courts and tennis courts, because you just don't get that choice again. Like, when we make this decision, that's it. Because once it's R4000, it's developed, there's never going to be a space there for that to happen. So that was just a comment on maybe why I kind of jump back to these things sometimes, even though it is late in the game. So.
Bruce, I'm looking on page 5 now. So I guess this would be part of the memo as well. I was looking at table 1, which is the capacity analysis in terms of units, lots, whatever you want to call them.
Yes.
And I think what that word means is this is the development potential of the land in this area that's not yet developed. Is that correct?
Generally, however, capacity is a little bit different than development potential. Capacity basically means all things are lining up like the stars are aligned. This is the capacity we're going to put into our comprehensive plan that we have for these designations. It gives you an idea of what the difference between the existing and the new is. But if you look at it saying, well, we're going to get 33 lots or 33 dwelling units on this, it may not be that, close. So the idea behind it, this is what we'll base our traffic impact analysis on it. Our experience has been usually our capacity number is more than the actual lot or unit yield, but it's way better to overstate than to understate.
Sure, you know, I can appreciate that. So, but we're given a range. So we're not really looking at I don't know, maybe you can explain that a little bit. We're saying that this is the max, but then we're saying, well, it's a range. And so,
Right.
I don't know, it's a little bit confusing on the table. And I've looked at it several times before. And this time I just, you know, it's based on the undeveloped land though, right? It's not the entire area, right?
Correct,
Of the
yes,
sub-area.
right. And if you look at the existing capacity, that's the existing capacity based upon the current land designations, 296. What the capacity for the changes as the commission is proposing is anywhere from 400 to 558. Now, the yield difference, the reason there's a range is because of the RAC designation. The RAC designation is not got a density cap, remember. So there's quite a range of different numbers that you could get there. You could do all efficiency units and get a much higher number than you could if you did like 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom or whatever that happens to be. What we have seen, and this is one of the things that's tough, is because the RAC, we haven't had one of these projects in the 35-foot range. What we have received from developers and Stone County has identified, they're thinking along the lines, this is about a 20, 25 dwelling unit per acre kind of a concept. But we don't have an actual physical on-the-ground development in the RAC underneath the, but you got to remember, it's only 3 levels, and, you know, so that's why we want to make sure that there's a range there, so that we do base the calculation on what it could be potentially, and that's what the traffic impact analysis will make. Well, if there's 230, that means this many trips. We just want to make sure we take the worst case scenario and have that clearly identified, that we can basically let everybody know that what it could be is, again, the worst situation.
So wouldn't the worst situation be the 558?
It would.
Okay, so I guess what's the benefit of having the range there instead of just the 558?
Well,
I'm not trying to be.
oh, I'm
and
sorry,
it's been a while,
I'm sorry.
But we're saying capacity, and then we're saying, well, it's you know, roughly between this and this, and
And, you know, and that's perfectly legit. We just don't want to have a number out there that we don't think is probably likely to occur. And we don't believe a 558 is likely to occur. We think it's going to be a lower number. And that's why we have the lower number in bold, because we believe, based upon the information we received from the demographers who do these calculations, what they've identified they believe is going to happen there. And they usually hit these things fairly close. But you know, I'm perfectly willing to put the bold and the higher number versus the lower number.
well, I guess my
So-
question is, does it have some kind of benefit when you're doing the traffic analysis? Is there some reason why we have that there? I guess?
Yes, because we want to make sure the traffic analysis looks at the most trips that could be happened in case that trips some type of a failure in the transportation corridor analysis. And this is exactly the type of approach we took when we did our periodic planning code amendment. As you'll recall, you guys were participating in this. When we applied the RAC to the Canyon Park sub-area, and we got the additional 3,000 units, that was a very large number of potential housings there. We wanted to make sure we identified that clearly in our traffic impact analysis so that we could identify the appropriate type of development, traffic improvements that would be necessary. We don't want to understate that.
Okay. So I guess maybe I'm asking the wrong question, and I might be belaboring this. So it sounds like what you're doing is you're trying to get the worst case scenario, but you're also trying to project something that's going to be realistic and reasonable.
More
Is that
realistic, yes.
kinda-
Yeah,
okay.
and that's what we're trying to convey here, is that you do have a range here, and it could be as much as this. More likely, it's going to be this. But again, we just want to make sure that it's very clear what could occur there.
Okay. So, but these numbers, what they represent, and I don't know if it would be worth putting some kind of clarification in here, but this is looking at this sub-area and looking at all the areas in the sub-area, all the properties that have not been developed yet and that could potentially develop.
Yes.
That's the number we're looking at. We're not looking at, okay, here's the total capacity of this area. We're looking for from this day on kind of a thing, right?
That's the idea, yeah. We don't
Okay.
want to get, because again, we're only talking, and
Right.
of course, we're only talking about the very narrow study area, if you would, basically the blue dashed outline.
Okay. I don't know if it'd be worth clarifying that at all. This is not stated anywhere in here. I mean, maybe all the traffic guys know that and all the development guys know that, but, you know, if someone were to look at this and say, oh, well, this is the traffic that we're gonna see, you know, in 20 years, well, it's really not. It's the added traffic we're gonna see. So just a clarification, I guess, there. So,
It's interesting because, remember when we did the periodic plan and code amendment, we spent a lot of time on the land use element and identifying that capacity analysis table. And what I'll do is, let me find some of the language we crafted for that and put it into here as well. Because that may have done a better job of explaining it. I kind
well,
of
I wasn't
glossed over
here
it.
for that, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm
so,
sorry. My apologies.
but
Okay,
yeah,
well,
I'd be interested in taking a look at it.
that's
for
a
sure.
perfect thing for me to include in here then. Okay, thank you.
And then just one more question. I was just looking through, you know, the 4 items that got postponed for, from the last big effort, and the one was Mr. Malik property. It doesn't state what he's requesting specifically, what zone he's requesting. Is that, am I missing something, or is that a sufficient request? Is he kind of putting
well,
some onus on the
his-
city to determine?
His
what it should
request,
be?
and again, Mr. Malik is maybe not a really sophisticated type of property owner, but he basically identified that his desire was to be able to put a fourplex on his property. Well, we don't do zoning based upon whether you can have a fourplex or a duplex. We do it based upon a density maximum. And so the R4000, I don't think he's going to get a fourplex, but it's the most appropriate land use designation we have. To get to fourplex, I think we'd have to assign a 2800, which we looked at, and the commission said that's just too dense in this location. So, and that's part of the idea when you're dealing with so many different folks. And again, remember, his request came in during the periodic plan and code update, when people came to hearings and could make a request to have a change. So it didn't follow the exact, dot the i's, cross the t's type of an approach as we
But
would
it's
ordinarily
sufficient
get.
enough for us to respond to. is what
For
you're-
this
okay.
point, yes, it is.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Thanks.
Sorry. The only thing that I noted in there is the verbiage on each of the sub-area plan elements that you've recommended for the change. In a lot of these, you say it's appropriate to include a mandatory affordable housing component for the above land. If we could just change that to.
Placeholder.
Yeah, exactly. If we just say that it may be appropriate to include a mandatory. Because
Understand.
again, until we actually have that affordable housing special meeting, I think that'd be more appropriate. And that's all I had. So I think we've covered the 4 items that we wanted to. You had a question there?
We're gonna take a look at the northwest side of 228 in Meridian,
Yeah.
which is the
Page number 8, have you got that?
14.
Page 14, got it, okay.
I don't know if you want feedback on this or not, Bruce, and we can continue, but later in the packet, we've got a diagram which shows the required 25% retail on the first floor. I don't want to make any major tweaks, but I was hoping we could bump that up to 50% on the first floor, or do you think that's going to be too extreme? When we looked at this a couple months ago, I thought we had a general consensus that 25% might not get there. I don't want to speak for you guys, but that was one of my questions. And then the second part of it was we have a requirement that anything on the second floor above, second and third floor, that they have to have 50% residential usage. I don't know that that's necessary to include in the language. I can't imagine anyone doing retail or office at that location on the second or third floor. We can add it. I just think it makes it a little clunky. That's all.
Yeah, and it's not the usual thing we do. However, when we had the discussion, it was one of the things we were talking about when, well, actually Arthur Sullivan with Arch was here and identified, you're trying to get a mixed use designation within this area, and if mixed use is not just retail and offices, it's also residential. And his recommendation was to insert some type of a minimal residential component into the building, and the commission talked about it and decided to do the upper floors of that facility because that made the most sense. But that's kind of one of those items that the commission can look at this and say, from a policy standpoint, maybe the city doesn't care what's on the second and third floors. We're going to require the minimum amount of retail, and then if it's residential or offices, maybe all those uses are adequate in this location.
Yeah, it just seems like residential would be natural use for a development like that, but I don't know, if we feel like we need to define it, we can. I'm referring to page 22. You guys all have it in front of you, and I don't know if you guys are fine with the 25% frontage on retail and office, but that's the one tweak I'd like to see is get that expanded if we can. It's because we identified this as one of the major areas that we want to, focus a neighborhood business where people won't have to drive down 228th and add to the traffic problems. I don't know if we get there with 25% in a market where apartments are selling.
I guess looking at that, that's 25% of the frontage, right, Bruce? So that's not even 25% of the floor area.
Correct, yes.
So in this scenario here, you could have a little, I don't know, coffee stand or a newspaper stand or something, and then you could have residential surrounding that. Is that right, on the frontage?
Yes.
I mean, I kind of like the idea of having residential stoops, that face the street. That's kind of a cool thing, but I don't know. That's it. It does seem small, 25% of the frontage to me. Is this something I just didn't see last time, or have we kind of been on that for a while?
Most locations in the city, it's a 10% minimum requirement, and we've gotten a lot more than that. One of the concerns, however, is that you don't really want to require so much that you have vacant storefronts.
Empty space.
And that's one of the issues that we've talked about, because that looks way worse than having just not enough retail. But one of the things that we have identified is that as these facilities go in, the first floor structural components, well, you know this better than we do, is that they can accommodate many different types of uses within those types of buildings, and they can add or subtract retail as it so desires. In fact, we have one of the projects, the 104, they have an area that is reserved as a potential for retail, but they've turned it into their recreational room. So there's a lot of different aspects that we've kind of let the market dictate those type of things, but I'm certainly willing to look at different numbers if the commission so desires.
Well, so I guess in this picture, and I don't know if the verbiage reflects this as well, but we're talking minimum 25, right? Minimum
Yes.
25%?
Yes.
And then we're also talking about on the second floor, minimum 50% residential, is that right?
Oh, I'm sorry. In the draft code language, I actually have put in 20% gross floor area. I didn't actually put in frontage. I put in gross floor area.
So I guess to me, I like the idea of the retail being on the frontage. So I guess I'd rather have, if those are equivalent, I would rather have a requirement for frontage retail, because that's really what you're trying to do is people are driving by and they're seeing activity there, and they're not looking at a video, there's a video store around
Right.
the back or something. Well, they don't
Right.
have video stores anymore, do they? How old am I? Anyway, to me, that seems like a really good thing to do would be to require it on the frontage, and maybe it is 25%. I don't know, but you definitely want that front corner being retail.
You do.
I think so. And then that's a minimum requirement, though, right? We're not.
Exactly.
We're saying 25.
At least,
but
at least,
at
yes.
least, yeah. Okay. So and the verbiage reflects that.
Yes.
Okay. So this picture is just illustrative for us.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you try and get an idea
Okay.
conveyed, but
And then it would be the same thing for the bottom, for the second floor there, where we're requiring a minimum residential area there. Yeah, that's all I have.
Yeah, that's what I recall as well. I know we had a conversation quite a bit about the appropriate amount of square footage of retail office. And I had recalled it being 25% of the total downstairs as opposed to just, yeah,
Yeah, and that's actually what I put into the
yeah, okay.
draft language. What I'll do is I will make changes to these illustrations to make sure that we convey that actually what the commission is actually wanting to do there.
So Bruce, was the text, did it talk about frontage space
It
on the
talks
building?
about externally orienting that frontage space.
Right.
Or that space. Now, you could change it, because I've got it either to the, the Meridian or 228th, or to the
parking
interior
lot.
parking lot areas. We could just make it Meridian and 228th Street if you so desire.
I mean, it seems more appropriate to me. I don't want to try to dictate what a builder or developer wants to do, but we are trying to create something here. Or,
It's a
you know,
logical
facilitate
location
something.
from a
so,
community perspective, absolutely.
yeah, so I guess I would be in favor of some type of requirement for frontage space.
So basically what we do is we would require that retail office use to be oriented toward 228th Street and Meridian Avenue. Okay.
Any other comments, thoughts? If not, I think we're ready to continue the public hearing. Is that correct, Bruce?
That's correct.
Okay. If I can get a motion to continue the public hearing, I'm sorry.
I hate interrupting, sorry. What about the MC Coast and the DNR one? Do we need to weigh in on those, or are we good with the findings and conclusions that are included in this packet?
Well, again, we're having one more conversation on those. So there is no, this is not definitive yet. I think the next meeting is the 27th, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, where we'll, finalize that.
Yeah, I think that that's pretty well been established.
I mean,
but-
those are 9,600, right?
Yeah,
Leaving them?
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Is that your understanding, Pat?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if anyone had a discussion,
Oh,
but
gotcha.
that was the same, what I was
I'm
thinking,
okay with
so. Okay, we'll revisit it again next month.
Commissioner Bleak, do you have a question or comment? Did you have a question or comment? Okay. If I can get a motion to continue the public hearing for the 2015 docket plan code amendment till April 27th, 2016.
Motion to continue the public hearing on the Shelton View Meridian 3rd Southeast Subarea to, what date did we decide?
April 27th.
April 27th?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. There is no study session tonight. Any old business? Reports from staff?
Yeah, actually, tonight we have a few, so
Okay.
get ready. First of all, I want to introduce the new Planning Commission members. We have one in attendance tonight, Ms. Jean Zorns. She was recently appointed. She will be
Welcome.
taking her chair on the April 6th meeting. The other gentleman who was, also identified as a Planning Commission member was Mr. Jason Hampton. You'll see him on April 6th, so we have a full quorum again, which is a really wonderful thing. The other thing I want to identify is that Planning Manager Hassler provided a memo to you late this afternoon that kind of outlines the docking, the 2016 docking process. I know there'd been some discussion about maybe there's some other things that the commission would like to see raised in priority. And Planning Manager Hassler went through and really explained to the commission the process the city council followed in establishing these priorities. And I just want to emphasize a couple things. One is that we have a number of mandatory plan and code amendments the city has got to do, involving some things from the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System Permit Phase 2, and basically includes a low-impact development integration provision, as well as some mandatory things from other federal and state agencies we just have to do. Another one is the council has identified a very high priority for the Fitzgerald subarea, which will take a balance of the remainder of this first and second quarters. So we've got a really full plate already. And I guess what the planning manager Hassel was trying to convey is that there was a lot of discussion on the council about how to set these priorities. And I don't, we don't want you to think, well, maybe there wasn't as much discussion as there should have been. There was a considerable amount of discussion. And he wanted to just kind of recap what that discussion was, and let you know kind of what the upcoming year is going to be for all of us, and it's going to be a very busy year for us. So I just wanted to have that, just identify that one. The other is, of course, we have the capital facility project provision, and we're being asked to identify a planning commissioner who's willing to attend that. And I know at the last we heard is there were 3 individuals who were interested in participating in that program: Commissioner Cabe, Commissioner Vliet, and Commissioner Cecil. I don't know if we had ever actually identified who it was going to be. The finance department has said we really need to know which one it is so they can start scheduling the meetings with you guys. Basically, it's 2 all-day meetings in the month of August. So take that into consideration as you think about that. But I'm going to push a little bit to see if maybe one of you can identify who it will be so that we can report that, and then they'll start working with you on scheduling these all-day meetings. So if there's anybody really wanting to do it, I suggest you go, if there's 2 of you, go back and do rock, paper, scissors and figure out who's going to be. But whatever it is, we really do need to identify which commission member is going to be on that list, if you would, that participation group as soon as possible.
And not because of that, but I'll take my hat out of the running for that. The reason is I know the other 2 commissioners who would like to attend have a very, I guess, they have a very good background, I think, in that topic. So I think they may be more suited for that than myself.
So we're down to 2.
Rochambeau?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be happy to serve, and I know Roger would do a great job, so I don't know if we want to.
We're only allowed to have 1, unfortunately.
You want to arm wrestle?
I think you got that one. We'll decide and let you know by tomorrow.
Tell
We'll
you
talk
what.
after this meeting.
Tell you what, let's identify one of you and then have an alternate, so maybe that'll help a little bit. That's a good idea. So, maybe one would be the primary and the other would be an alternate.
That's mildly helpful.
Sorry, I'm doing the best I can here.
We'll get back to you tomorrow. We'll
One
talk
of those guys
offline.
figured out, and, yeah.
So whoever gets up earliest tomorrow morning gets, no, just kidding. Okay, yeah, let me know as soon as you possibly can. It's pretty important. The other item I've got is, of course, we have the Washington City's Insurance Administration training that's happening on April 20th. That's why we're not continuing this hearing to April 20th. And it's free. Please, if you want to go, we encourage you to go. It's a really great training opportunity. What we'll do is if there's more than 3, if there's 4 more commission members want to go, we will make sure and do a public notice so that there's no issue with the quorum or anything like that, as long as you don't conduct any business at that meeting, of course, the training. So the idea behind that is that I've got some additional brochures here, but we really do encourage you to go. It's a really neat training. And then finally, with the new commission, we're going to have some election of officers. And I want to let you know that we'll schedule that for the first meeting in May. The bylaws identify that the first meeting in May is when you'll do your election of officers. So that'll be on the May 4th, so we can take care of that bit of business. And that's all for staff reports. That's quite a lot for me.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Any reports from members?
I've got one, and I really hate to follow yours up with that, but I put together a letter because I did attend the council meeting where they were talking about the docket. I maybe wasn't quite as aware of how extensive they went into talking, the couple of hours they put in with regards to discussing how to prioritize ones. But there's a topic that I think we had a joint session with the council on, and so I wanted, with regards to clustering and the benefits of it. And so I was hoping I've given the letter to all of you. I don't know if I'm supposed to read it, but it's basically a letter to encourage the council to reconsider taking on or initiating conversations that we could have with regards to clustering in the year 2016 rather than delaying it to 2017. I do hate to say this even after getting Gary's notice. I didn't get it till today, so I didn't know. So. Do you want me to read, or just, yeah, why don't you comment on it?
I'd be in support of it, even if we get shot down. I just feel like we are sort of handcuffed with some of our decision making on upzones going forward until we get this figured out. I know Life as Bothell has progressed for years without it, but we keep saying that it might be a good fit for this property or this. It just having an open item without actually addressing it. I'd really like to push to try to resolve it, but maybe it takes more time than I would anticipate.
Well, I certainly think, I know, when we were on the Parks Board, there were several issues where we felt pretty strongly, and we wrote letters to the council, and some of those I think were constructive and helped, and I would be in support of sending something up and just letting them know how important we think it is.
And again, I think because we've put so much time and effort, discussing the upzoning, and we have a pretty good, we see a need for this. I fully support us signing this and just forwarding it on to the city council. I think we're all in agreement that this is an area that, we'd like them to, at the very least, identify that it needs to be done sooner rather than later, and we just can't keep kicking that can down the road. I think there's a number of property owners that would appreciate our efforts on that one as well. So, and again, we fully recognize that the city council has a full docket, that you guys are stretched so thin. We fully recognize that, and I don't think we're minimizing that at all. It's just a, hey, city council, please be aware that we really, really think this is important. And if there's anything that we can do to assist, we want to be able to do that. So, maybe they can put it back on our shoulders or something, or some of it. So with that, what would be the appropriate next step, do you think, Bruce?
Well, technically, they closed their public hearing on the docket. So, but again, I think, some type of a letter or memorandum from the council, or the commission to the council is a good way to communicate. And so I'm perfectly willing to assist with that endeavor.
Whatever you could do, we'd appreciate, so.
I think, along with your comment about if there's anything we can do to shoulder some of that load, I know those guys are swamped. And, not like we're not doing anything, but, that's just something that I think is real. I mean, we've been looking at stuff for 5 months here that would all be impacted by that type of a provision. And so in a very positive way, I think. And so it's not just something that we can stick in our back pocket. If we can pass that thing, it'll hit the road right away. And so, I mean, I'd be willing to spend more time on it if that's what it took. And I don't know if that's what they're looking for, but I guess they need to know that we're willing to back it, but we're also willing to put some extra effort into it.
Right.
At least I'm speaking for myself here, I guess. But
I think you've got 3 other heads nodding yes as well with that one, so.
Yeah.
So-
Okay.
So whatever method you think would be appropriate, Bruce, we'd certainly appreciate your help on that.
All right. Well, I'll have a conversation with Gary tomorrow morning,
Okay.
and Tom here, and we'll see what we can do as far as that goes. Maybe Tom's got something to offer as well.
Well, we appreciate your comments, and City Council does have certain priorities that they're looking for in the 2016 plan and code updates. I think a letter or memo to the council would be effective if the commission chooses to go down that path. Also, citizen comments are always open for 3 minutes before every meeting. We wish we could get them all done, but this is a busy time, and we've got a number of projects going with Fitzgerald and some items in the downtown area that are kind of critical, that have huge dollar impacts to the city if we can make some changes to the code and plan for those items as well. Eventually that'll recede, and we'll be able to move on to these other important areas like Nike Hill and Fitzgerald, or Nike Hill and East Riverside Drive and Canyon Park.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second?
We are adjourned.
Thank you very much.